With an update on that massive operation to rescue hundreds of trekkers stranded on Mount Everest, authorities say hundreds of others have been rescued after a sudden snowstorm struck, leaving the hikers with no way out at high altitude campsites over 4,900 meters. Well, the unseasonable storm hit the Tibetan side of Everest on Friday during China's busy Golden Week holiday, a peak season for tourism in the area. Monty Francis takes a look now at the rescue operation.
Considered the highest point on Earth, it became the site of a high-stakes rescue operation Monday as a group of hikers slowly made their way down to a safer elevation. A weekend snowstorm caught hundreds of Chinese hikers by surprise, trapping them under a meter of snow.
Do we know when the rescuers are going to arrive?
We don't know.
We still don't know.
This woman posted a video on social media while inside her tent, afraid of being crushed by the weight of the snow.
Several tents have collapsed because of the snow.
The hikers were trapped on Mount Everest's eastern face in Tibet at an elevation of about 5,000 meters or 16,000 feet. At its highest peak, Everest reaches about 8,800 meters, making it the tallest in the world. To carry out the rescue, teams used drones to locate the group, then trekked up the mountain with horses and oxen to clear a path so hikers could safely descend. Experts say that given the temperature on the mountain, hypothermia is an even bigger threat than being buried by the snow.
So you're in a temperature range of, let's say, -3 Celsius to +10. And actually, that's quite a risky temperature range because anything above freezing means that you're potentially going to be contending with wet. You're going to get wet.
The ordeal, the result of a rare October snowstorm and a surge in hikers observing a week-long national holiday in China. Not just for professional climbers, Mount Everest has become a popular site for less experienced hikers as well. The Chinese government says that a record number of people visited the Everest region last year.
We're going to talk more on the situation on Mount Everest. Let's bring in Carl Carter, who is an associate professor in tourism marketing at Swansea University. Carl, thank you so much for your time. This really couldn't have happened at a worse time, really, could it? Because it's during China's busy Golden Week holiday, which is a peak season for tourism in the area.
Yeah, well, that certainly would have attracted a lot of tourists to the area. And I think actually in the West, we're not aware of how many tourists are actually traveling now from China to the north face of Everest. Traditionally, tourists have been going to Nepal, and maybe you get 50,000 tourists a year going the Everest Base Camp in Nepal. But on the northern side, we now get 500,000 Chinese tourists traveling to see the largest mountain on Earth.
We don't have much information on the rescue effort. I wanted to pick your brain a little bit just to try and explain to us how authorities are perhaps going about this massive operation.
Well, it's obviously a big task, particularly in what is still a very remote area, and we have to remember that this is an area that's higher than Mont Blanc. The whole region is at severe altitude. And generally the conditions this time of year should be relatively favourable. But that eastern side of Everest, which has become popular with trekkers, as you can see in some of the pictures here, that does get a lot more precipitation than some of the Tibetan plateau further north. So, it's not unsurprising to see this amount of snowfall.
Well, Carl, in recent years, Mount Everest has been plagued by many different concerns, overcrowding, environmental concerns, and also a series of fatal climbing attempts. There's also been disasters in the surrounding areas. This really all just begs the question, is climbing Mount Everest worth it, really? Is it worth the risk?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a big rock, and it's the tallest rock in the world. So everybody wants to go and see it and have their piece of it. And that's the work that I've been doing. And that's been, ever since the beginning of mountaineering. So I did a lot of work looking at the early British expeditions, which actually traveled through Tibet to these faces. So I think that's what people want to do. They want to follow in the footsteps and get as close as they can to the mountains. But as you can see here, a lot of the Chinese tourists aren't really equipped, perhaps don't have quite as long an outdoor heritage as you might see in the West. Maybe don't have the outdoor skills that we might expect in first aid, being able to cross rivers, having the right equipment. This can, as your previous commentator said, be quite a dangerous situation for hypothermia. But at the same time, I think the Chinese government, they have all of the resources available to them, and will certainly be doing a lot to try and get some of those trekkers down off the mountain.
This storm was sudden. Is there, though, enough advertisement, or is there enough messaging on the risks that surrounds climbing the Mount Everest?
Well, I think, partly this is this sort of new emergence of adventure tourism in China, is becoming very popular, like we might have seen in the Alps, but this is very recent. So, people don't necessarily have that information. And the big difference, if you're a Western tourist and you travel to Everest, you have to go with a guided group. But if you're a Chinese citizen, you don't have to, as long as you inform the authorities that you're going hiking, you don't have to have a guide or any prior experience. You can just be a solo trekker, and there isn't a lot of kind of trekking information, or indeed some of the good things they have on the Nepalese side, such as a sort of trekker registration scheme and having a trekking identity card before you set out.
Well, would any of the stranded trekkers at all envision that this storm could happen? Do you think any of them in their minds would have thought about the risk, perhaps dressed more warmly in case, have stronger gear? Do you think they would have had that come up at all?
Well, I think, again, it's just become so popular so quickly. Obviously people are going to have, jackets and hopefully have sturdy boots. But I've seen some reports that people are just, had a very thin kind of raincoats to deal with this sort of conditions. You do have to remember that this is a high altitude mountain environment with all of those, changeable weather situations that you can have. I mean, ironically, what we were looking at was the decline of the glaciers. I mean, glaciers in this area have declined by probably a third over the past couple of decades. And certainly the main glacier that they're trekking next to has lost a lot of ice. But simultaneously now we're getting, changeable weather and actually increased precipitation. So, that's obviously then making the weather actually wilder in these places.
Well, fingers crossed that the authorities managed to get all the stranded trekkers down. Carl, thank you so much for your insight. Thank you so much for joining us on the programme. Really good to have your time today. Thank you.
Let's hope so. Thank you.